Hey folks, my name is Alex, and in this video we're going to learn what database migrations are and then create our first database migration using Prisma. Let's dive into it. A database migration is a set of incremental changes to your database. Database migrations go by other names such as migration and schema migration. You can think of a migration as version control for your database because they allow you to track the history of changes to your database schema. After describing the structure of your database in your Prisma schema, you can automatically generate the SQL describing the changes and then apply it to your database using Prisma Migrate. The generated files will also be added to version control to keep your schema in sync with your application code. Before we generate our first migration, we'll need to make two changes, and that's adding a shadow database URL to the data source block in the Prisma schema and configuring our IP address to the database server. The shadow database is a second database that Prisma Migrate uses to detect changes in the schema and then use it to generate a new migration before it's applied. The shadow database is only used in development environments and when you're using development-specific commands. If you're using a database hosted on your computer for development, you don't need to add this block because Prisma will automatically create and delete it for you. But since we're using a cloud-hosted database for development, you'll need to configure this manually. So in your schema, add a shadow database property to the data source block. The shadow database URL resembles the URL property, so we'll need to provide an environment variable called shadow database URL. Next, update the .env file to include the shadow database URL variable. And I've already created my shadow database on Azure, so I'll go ahead and paste my connection string here. Next, let's confirm that our IP address is allowed to access the shadow database. So on the Azure portal, navigate to Set Server Firewall in the Overview tab. This is the page that you'll use to manage the IP addresses of applications or users that intend to connect to your database. You'll be able to see all the IP addresses that can access your application in the Firewall Rules section, and you'll also be able to see your IP address right above the Firewall Rules table. If your IP address is not already added to the Firewall Rules table, click Add your client IPv4 address, and this should add your address to the Firewall Rules table. And once you're ready, click Save, and you're all done. Let's now create the migration. Back in your project, open a new terminal window and ensure that you're in the API directory. The Prisma CLI provides a command for generating migrations with the migrate dev command. So type the command npx prisma migrate dev. Hit enter. The command will ask you to give a name for your migration, so feel free to give it a name you'd like here, but I'll call mine init and then hit enter to continue with the steps. The command did a couple of things. The command created a new migration file that was saved inside the migrations directory that's inside the Prisma folder. The migration was then applied to the database, and then it generated the Prisma client, which we'll use in a later video, so don't worry about it. If we take a look at the generated migration, you'll notice that the SQL does exactly what we specified in the Prisma schema. It first creates a new table called employee, and then adds the columns with the data types we specified. And then it finally sets the primary key and unique constraints. And that's it. So let's recap what we covered in this video. We learned that database migrations are used to track the history of changes to your database. We also learned that a shadow database is a second temporary database used by Prisma Migrate to detect changes to your database and then generate migrations. We also added our IP address to the Azure SQL firewall and finally generated our first database migration using the Prisma Migrate dev command, which was also applied to our database. In the next video, we'll take a look at how you can explore and manipulate data in Azure SQL using Prisma Studio. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.